All right, thank you, members. Let's resume. When we took a break, we were at number 4, ministerial discretion. We went through the point in the bill as articulated in section 13 of the bill, which is the Citizens Act, Citizens Bill, section 13. So it's now over to members for discussion. Ministerial discretion, the finality clauses, and procedural fairness. Over to you, members. First, let me say, though, that matters of immigration, as articulated in section 13 of the bill, and one has to understand that we're dealing with matters of national security as we speak to, I use the term powers of the minister. And as the lawyers in the room will tell you, all citizens of this country have a recourse in the court of law. But the issue of national security must be weighed. I think it has the heaviest weighting when it speaks to the discretion and the powers of the minister. And as the old people would say, you don't wash your linen in public. And it's not everything that you need to make available to the public on matters of national security. Actually, matters of national security are kept within the confines of the cabinet and the government, or sometimes not even the members of the cabinet. No. On some of the challenges, or some of the issues, or matters of national security. And we want that we consider the issue of national security when we speak to the discretion and the response of a minister on matters of immigration. So over to you.
Mr. Chairman, the very matter that is under discussion, in particular section 13 or clause 13 of the bill, already exists in section 12 of the current act. It has been in the bill, it has been modified because it also gave a power of an ouster. It contained what in law is called an ouster clause, a clause that sought to prevent the court from inquiring into the matter. But in the new draft, it is modified so that the minister exercises discretion whether he should decline to give reasons for his decision. And he may do so under the constitutional rubric of national security. The interest of the state is paramount, and the citizens must be protected when there is a crisis. And if the minister considers that there is information that would breach national security and cause conflict in the country, he is at liberty to refrain from giving reasons. If a citizen feels aggrieved by that decision, that citizen has recourse to the court. When the citizen goes to court, the judge will then ask to see the matter and will determine whether the minister should have exercised his discretion differently or whether he was correct to withhold reasons. These are all matters that it is the law at present, and there are global matters. It's not peculiar to Barbados. Every country protects its national security and guards it jealously. And our advice would be that this clause remain as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice. Comments? I see Senior Minister agrees. Minister Husbands agrees. Minister Springer agrees. Minister Ray agrees. Senator Malalu, any?
I don't consider myself an expert in this area, so I defer to the experts that we have on the panel.
Thank you for your honesty. And he gives way to the expert, which means he takes the advice of the expert, so he agrees. So we can move on. If there are no further comments on this matter, let's move on. 5, compressed citizenship timelines and citizenship integrity. We had submissions from the Democratic Labour Party, Anthony Joseph, Blackman and Seeley, Gilden Bourne and Dujon, and the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And their broad agreement that the qualifying periods for citizenship are too short, but there are some remedies that differ, and we will hear from the committee your views. Some persons cite the 5 to 7 year international gold standards, and the Bar Association concerned that the 2-year cripples due diligence. Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, while not proposing a specific timeline, expressly recommends that the first schedule be reviewed without creating any transactional pathways to citizenship. And the Democratic Labour Party submits the bill should not proceed in the current form and warns that well-rated residence plus accelerated citizenship invites international scrutiny. Joseph proposes a fixed 6-year period. Blackman and Seeley propose a tiered 3 to 5 year test, and Gilden Bourne and Dujon cite the 5 to 7 year international gold standard as articulated earlier. Over to the committee. You can take a minute to find the section. That's in the Citizen Act, the qualifying periods, and I think it's section 3. Just for clarity, 730 days is approximately 2 years. And I guess you will see a submission that references 2 years. And I guess that's where the section 5, section 3, part 5 comes in. When you speak to 730 days, and the 1,095 days is just around 3 years.
Okay. Chair, in general, I think in trying to speak to this particular group of submissions that we have, I would have to delve into my own, the way I see it myself. So I want to agree in general with what they're saying. I think that the path is too short. And again, I think it's important for us to understand what it is that we're trying to do. I think earlier a number of colleagues in here have mentioned policy must come first and rules afterwards. So in understanding the policy, I kind of asked myself, what problem are we seeking to solve? And we have a number of problems. The population survey has been there, the skills has been there, lots of different things have been talked about. But when I look at this, and I compare it to other countries that I'm familiar around the world, some of them, this seems extremely fast-paced, and I'm concerned that it maybe does not give us enough time to do the appropriate due diligence upon someone who is then going to travel around the world with a Barbadian passport, which is an extremely strong document and recognized many, many places, much stronger than many of our CARICOM brothers and sisters. So when I look at this overall, it is not lost upon me that you must read this in conjunction with the free movement that we have with 3 countries today. Those 3 countries, I believe, are St. Vincent, we're going to make sure I don't get it wrong, Dominica and Belize are the 3 countries. So we have a sister piece of legislation that allows citizens of those countries to come and work and live here. Then we are creating this situation where 180 days out of 730 gives them a pathway to citizenship. And in that first bill, the Caribbean Free Movement, when we pass that bill, it also has in it the discretion for the minister to add any other countries that they wish, CARICOM countries. That does not have to come back to Parliament in any way. The minister can add any other country within CARICOM to it. So you put all of those things together, my conclusion is this is too quick. And then I will throw into a third factor, which I think comes into the, and it has not been raised by the submissions, but comes under the same general, is that many of our Caribbean CARICOM brothers and sisters, those countries have citizenship by investment rules. So what is actually happening when you put all 3 of those things together is that you can have someone purchase a citizenship which they can get purely on the criteria of that country, which is a monetary value. They get a CARICOM passport. That CARICOM passport immediately allows them to work and live in Barbados. And having worked and lived in Barbados 180 days, they are then eligible via this route for Barbadian citizenship. And that concerns me greatly. Thank you.
Comments? The section in the bill that speaks to the 180 days is on an aggregate basis after you've been in the country for a period of 730 days, which is approximately 2 days. So they're looking at an aggregate basis, not that you get the citizenship after the 180 days, but it is on an aggregate basis. That's what I'm saying. During the period of at least 730 days, immediately preceding the date of application.
Your clarification is that you must spend 2 years before you're eligible to apply. And my understanding was once you have reached the 180, but even if you are correct, sir, that after 2 years you can apply. Having, after the 730 days, if you have effectively 6 months resident in Barbados over those 2 years, I would still be of the opinion, and I would agree with the submissions, and I would make my own submission that that seems too short. especially when you add in those other 2 points, which I do not want to be lost, which is one, that we have given the minister, whoever that minister might be at this time, it might be your government, it might not be, it might be another government, whoever the minister is at the time, the right to add, without any further discussion with Parliament, other CARICOM nations to that free movement. And then you add to that the fact that we are a sovereign nation and our passport should be a sovereign matter. But when you have other countries choosing who they will sell passports to, and then by virtue of that act, we have to recognize those persons in Barbados, I think that that is a significant weakening of the Barbados passport, because we don't get to choose who they choose to sell passports to. We don't get to choose that. I mean, you can believe here today and say that, okay, they're all doing a great job, and maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I haven't looked through it to see. I am aware, through the media, and many of us have seen, of problems with some of that CBI programs and who has had passports. In fact, we've seen worse than that. And maybe Senior Minister can comment on it, as he maybe knows more about this than me, but I've seen, in the case of Dominica, for example, there was a very high-profile case of a diplomatic passport, even, in being issued from there. So we have to look at all of these matters together and recognize our Barbados passport is a very strong passport. Those who get it by this method, coming through the CBI method, we got to be very careful, very, very careful. And I think that this is a weakness that this bill is creating. Thank you.
Comments, members?
Chairman, I want to, as I'm reflecting on what Senator Molyneux has said, and I don't at all dismiss what he's saying. I think it is a legitimate concern that he has raised and that others have raised, because the issue of the sacrosanctness of the Barbados passport and citizenship is one that I think Barbadians treat to with a very deep level of concern and, of course, national pride, as we ought to, because it is one of the remaining, or one of the critical vestiges of our sovereignty and our independence as a nation. So we should treat it with the level of seriousness. Now, the question to me really is not so much how quickly you can access that, even though I presume for some people that is the only thing that is occupying their attention, and there is some kind of residual there's a concern, let me put it that way, about getting that status, and we should guard it with our lives, I think. But the challenge is that in a modern society where information is so easily attainable, where scrutiny is so advanced, and I heard Senator Molyneux speak about how long it takes for us to find out if somebody is a criminal or not. But you didn't put it in those words. But if somebody is in a troubled circumstance, not a good actor in the context of what we are speaking about, how long does it take for us to be able to do due diligence to arrive at a conclusion that a person should be given access to citizenship and to, as we call it, a Barbados passport? The issue for me is, how do you manage the process in a way to make it more efficient? We are here, that is the people who have designed and drafted this, because we have known from our own interaction with the system, it takes way too long. That is the problem, Senator Molyneux, that I think the drafters are trying to fix. We have situations where there are people who would have applied for citizenship. And I mean, many of the lawyers can tell you, many others can tell you, those persons pass away still waiting on the immigration department to get back to them, you know. And they have done everything. I see the chief immigration officer smiling. They have done everything. And it is not necessarily the immigration officers to blame, or it is the process through which you have to go. And people have had 8, 10, sometimes 15 years waiting in the wings to have those citizenship papers processed and that certificate given to you. It has happened as well for permanent residents and all the other things that we've had. So the drafters, in looking at this process, is, I'm sure in the back of their mind, based on the policy, how do we not flippantly turn the thing into some kind of bargain basement sale where you go down and buy the thing at well, they ain't got no more Cape Shepherd, but wherever in town you go and buy it and take it off the shelf and you got a Barbados passport or some citizenship and you walk along and you feel good. Not in that type of way, but in a way that the system is far more certain, far more clear and accountable and efficient. And that is where you got. So we have to find a way to bridge the gap between efficacy and the whole issue of probity, so that we don't necessarily allow things that we do not want to have happen. Now, this issue about the CIP, I've heard this issue, and I cannot say that I have not heard of examples where there have been issues with those programs. And we know that the industrialized countries, US and the UK in particular, have been putting pressure on those countries that have CIP programs in terms of how they govern them and the rules of how people who are getting who are buying these citizenship by investment program things and getting passports and so forth and so on. And to be fair to our colleagues in the OECS in particular, where these programs are found, they have responded. They have responded by trying to upgrade the rules, change the systems, be more vigilant, have more due diligence, and so forth and so on. And any system you have is going to have loopholes, and people will exploit them where they can find them. This thing, however, in tying this to the free movement, I think there's a slight misunderstanding of how the free movement process works, and that there is an assumed automaticity that when you get a citizenship by investment designation in X country, that you then automatically are allowed to enter Barbados as a citizen of that country if we have that kind of relation under the free movement thing, and that you automatically get Barbadian citizenship. I don't know that that is necessarily the case. I know that you may be permitted to move, but under the rules governing the Immigration Act, the responsibility of the minister and the responsibility of the chief immigration officer, there are rules that apply to how persons who are moving are going to be allowed to enter Barbados and function. It is not a free-for-all, contrary to popular belief. So my thing is the happy medium between the application of the existing rules, and if we need to strengthen those for better due diligence, then we will have to consider those, particularly on the grounds of national security, and the efficiency and efficacy of the system which we are running. Because right now, the system is not fit for purpose. That is my humble submission to the committee. It is not fit for purpose. And it needs to be re-examined. Whether we accelerate persons to citizenship, and the question is, okay, you may feel in a nostalgic way that a person should wait, let's take an arbitrary number, 10 years, before he could be considered to be a Barbadian. My question to that would be, does waiting 10 years or 2 years make you more of a Barbadian than if you wait 3 years or 4? I mean, that is really what it comes down to. It comes down to a number. And I know people feel comfortable saying, yes, we need to extend this. We should not shorten this. And you must prove your way in the society, and you must immerse in the culture and all of these good and wonderful things. But at the end of the day, If I can stay here for 10 years, I can hang around Barbados for 10 years and have absolutely no, and there are a lot of people who do it, absolutely no connection with this society whatsoever. But my 10 years give me the qualification to become a citizen. But a person who spends 2 years or 3 years, who is immersed in the society, who is doing things, who is not only investing but into the culture and into the society and contributing and so forth and so on, who may be working, who may be paying taxes and doing all the other things that high-priced lawyers and accountants that they can't afford don't allow them to be able to escape, is adumbrated in their effort to become a citizen. But a person who spends 10 years on a number and has nothing to show other than that they visited a few months every year and they have an Airbnb that people occupy, or whatever it is, can get citizenship. So my thing is, we have to be realistic about what we're dealing with. The current age of information and the rapidity, the quickness, the speed with which we are able to access information gives us new tools to manage the system. We also have to determine for our own comfort, but in a realistic way and a practical way, what is the length of time that we presume a person should be able to assimilate into society in which they think, and I do not agree that it should go all into 7 and 10 years. I do not agree with that, personally. But we have to make that determination. And then we have to make the ultimate determination from a national security perspective, and I'm coming from that direction, whether or not this current bill, the existing law and this current bill, gives sufficient protection to those things that we want to ensure that we get the good ones and we do not get the bad ones. We are a country that is suffering population decline. You mentioned it, Senator Malinu. Others have mentioned it. The facts are there. Not only Barbados, a lot of other places too in the Caribbean. We are a society that is struggling to find appropriate skills along a spectrum, right up, right up. From the artisanal, right, you can go to the highest occupation or profession, if you want to call them that. We are struggling. And the only way in which we are going to be able to face down this problem is to make some change and to innovate the way in which we integrate people into the society to get the types of skills that we require to move this country forward. The only issue then is, as I said before, the rules that govern how that should be done. And my thing is, it ought not to be 1, complicated, 2, too lengthy, and 3, tied to this the emotive thing that we feel that this is something that we are flippantly giving away, because it is not something that we are flippantly giving away. And we have to put a value on it, not necessarily a monetary value as some people are doing, but we have to put a socio-cultural value on the question of citizenship. And if we do that, I think we find the right medium between the efficacy and the efficiency of it and the need to protect what people think, or people believe quite correctly so, is this precious thing that we have, which is our citizenship, and connectedly our passport that comes with it. So that's my submission, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Minister Husbands?
Yes. I know that this can be a very difficult issue. And sometimes I think one of the things we have to do a lot better as a government is to share more, explain more, and make sure that people have easy access to understanding what are some of the things we do. Now, the CARICOM freedom of movement does not automatically confer citizenship on anyone. What it does, under the CSME, eligible nationals can enter another CARICOM country without a visa. They can stay for an initial period of up to 6 months in some instances and apply for the right to live and work through their CARICOM skills certificate. If approved, they can reside indefinitely in that member state and they can work without a work permit. That is essentially a residency and labor mobility right that you're conferring, but not nationality. It does not grant citizenship. It does not give you a passport of the host country. It does not give you voting rights in most cases. Automatic permanent residence in the legal sense, though it resembles it functionally. So it's not automatic that you get permanent residence. Now, so you remain a citizen of your original country. Now, the path to citizenship is a separate process. If someone wants citizenship in the country they've moved to, they have to apply under the laws. They have to meet the requirements. They have to satisfy criteria such as good character, intent to reside, integration into the society, etc. Now, the issue of the time frame, I appreciate that because in times past, it really takes very long to go and find out what a person is about and what they've done and so on. But in the age of computers and ready technology and these huge databases, it's just like what happens now when you are coming in on a plane. The immigration can quickly go to the database, and police can quickly identify if you're on a plane, if you are a person of interest, if you're a person that somebody wants somewhere. So by the time your plane lands, they know who you are and know whether they're going to let you in or not. So there is a much greater speed. In support of what the foreign minister shared, Barbados urgently needs people. We do not have enough to be able to sustain the quality of life that we all enjoy. It does not matter whether we have a good job, whether we're living in wonderful circumstances, as long as we do not have sufficient population to carry the economy, you are going to have a severe impact on the government's revenue base, therefore the government services, etc. And the end result is that you will not be able to sustain the economy. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to shorten the number of years that it would take for you to become a citizen. It does not mean that we will compromise checking for the quality of citizen that we would want to bring in. That is very important to us because we have sought at all costs to actually avoid having a situation where our passport comes under question. We've sought to avoiding the traps and the dangers of the citizenship by investment route, because we recognize that while that quickly brings money, it also presents serious dangers to a country. And so we've avoided that, and that's why we have not gone that route. And we've sought in every way with the various bills that we bring to make sure that we don't create any loopholes that would allow for that. Now, it does not mean that somebody may not find a way to make something happen. All we would want to do is once we can find it and see it, and it needs to be addressed, I'm sure that the powers that be will sit and look at it and put whatever stop measures that are needed, because we're trying to balance growth of the nation, especially of working population people of working age, to be able to offset what is happening with the seniors in our community, and at the same time bring people of quality who can add to the country and bring benefits to the country, either by their energy, either by their resources, their skills, etc. So I just want to put that there for consideration, that this is not done carelessly, but we do try to think through things. But if there's anything that people find that might need addressed, the reason for this is for us to be able to question those things and put them on the table and make any adjustments if they're required.
Senator Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm surprised that more of the contributions to the submissions did not highlight this. As I'm relying on the summarized version of it. Said about 4 or 5 persons highlighted this to be an issue, because this is one of the biggest issues that was mentioned by the public in terms of the length of time a person would take before they become a citizen. I think I agree a lot with what Senator Malalu said, and I respect the contributions of all, but the reality is that what disadvantage will Barbados be in if we extended the time for citizenship? We hear about skills deficit, we hear about population size, etc. There are no guarantees. We are all pitching for the same thing. We want people to work, we want people to invest in Barbados, etc. But there are no guarantees. A person can come in, obtain citizenship, and then they can go back out of the country. They don't have to, if persons have to stay longer in the country before they become a citizen, we might actually get more benefit and value from that, because they're committed to being here for a certain amount of time and committed to giving back. But once they become a citizen, then they're free to move freely in and out of the country as long as they wish, in terms of giving back to the country, how we want them to be able to give back. So my question is, I think, for the government side, what disadvantage is Barbados really at if we extend the time span for persons to obtain citizenship in Barbados? I don't think also that it can be looked solely as a mechanism to bring people to work, because there are other things that can bring people to work. We have the movement of some CARICOM nationals. We have the welcome stamp, which was mentioned earlier, which was innovative in its own way. So there are other mechanisms, there has to be other mechanisms outside of citizenship that allows persons to come in Barbados, participate in the economy without becoming a citizen, especially in such a short time.
If I may.
Back to you, Minister Husband.
I think one of the disadvantages, because in my constituency there is that problem. I have a number of persons who either work at the university, they're CARICOM nationals. You have people there for different reasons. And as long as they're not citizens, there's certain things they're not entitled to. Yet they pay full taxes like everybody else. But they're not eligible for free healthcare right through, or education, and so on. And so when you have these very long periods, it denies them certain rights, because they're not accumulating things back at home either. They're not paying national insurance back there and so on. So you'll notice that some of the things that we've tried to do with the single market is to gradually reduce some of those disadvantages that people experience when they can't get citizenship. And so those would be some of the reasons why. The thing for Barbados, I think one of the best examples for us really is how Singapore would have dealt with, how they deal with their labor shortage. And they recognized that they needed population in order to build out a massive economy. Because at the end of the day, Barbados, for example, 269,000 people. St. Lucia, 120,000 people. Both countries need an airport. Right now, we have more people to contribute to help us build an airport. St. Lucia has less. So it's going to cost more per person to meet the government revenues needed to be able to build an airport. So being able to build out your population size quickly is very important for small nations like ours. Managing it, though, is a different thing. And that is why, alongside of your population and immigration policy, you have to be building out your water resources, you have to be building out your housing resources, you have to build out your health resources, your education resources. All of those have to run in parallel. But the truth is, we are not going to remain viable as an economy if we do not build out our population quickly. And right now, what we need are people in the working age section. It is open to older people to come, fine, but the people that we really need would be the working age persons who can help to lift and carry load. So there is a benefit to us to do this, and a benefit to them makes us attractive as a place for them to want to choose to come. Because there are many places people can choose from. So you're making yourself as attractive as possible to the wider external population to come here. I know you may not agree, but those are the reasons why.
Seth?
I'll take the opportunity to respond to both sides on that couple of points. Senior Minister Sinclair, implementation deficit disorder has nothing to do with the rules that we've written in here. And we can write all the laws we want and pass more laws in here, and if it's not going to be implemented properly, that's a different issue. I unfortunately have spent lots of times in here and passed laws to do with kite flying, to do with helmets, to do with all kinds of things, and nothing doesn't get implemented with it. So we spend all the right time. So we just be careful that we separate the laws that we pass from our ability to implement it. I will say that I was not aware of the challenges that some people have had with getting their citizenship regularized, because I have said many times from this chamber that I've found the Immigration Department to be world class, in fact to lead most other countries in the world. So I'm disappointed to hear what you have said, that they've had some challenges with that, and I will look into that myself and make sure I understand. What's one thing? The other thing is, you know, I agree completely that we need people in Barbados, and I've said this, but I also think that we should put in front of that word "need people." I would insert another word in there. We need the right people. We need the right people, and all I'm asking is that the reality, and I appreciate what you've said about the route that permanent residency still has a format you have to follow. But as it stands today, I think we would be wrong not to at least recognize that in Barbuda, which is a CARICOM as far as I know, Antigua and Barbuda, it's $230,000 to have a passport for them, US dollars. In Dominica, it's $200,000 for the main applicant. If you have 3 dependents, you can buy it for $250,000 US dollars, and you've got 4 people in. They'll have 4 Dominican passports. Those 4 people can come and live and work in Barbados. And you're absolutely correct in reminding me and others that having lived and worked here, having that right under the CARICOM free movement does not entitle you to citizenship. There is still some tests and so on, and that is those tests which I would like to be seen more robust. And I am personally opposed to recognizing persons who have gained their CARICOM citizenship through investment to then have the benefit of Barbados. Because the reality is that these programs are set up, and I can quote for you Grenada, I have them all here in front of me, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, all of them exist. These payments go into the government of that country to benefit that country, to strengthen national funds that they have. And they keep that money, and then those people have the right then to come to Barbados and live here. That is a weakness in this system that we should address, in my humble opinion. We should look very carefully at how did you get that passport before we simply say that you can come and live here. And if it is through a CBI program and you have contributed nothing to us, but you have given them the money somewhere else, that should be in some way something that we think of. That is what I'm asking us to look at and make sure that we do not create an unintended loophole in that way. And secondly, I want to remind us that, as I say, that CARICOM free movement, while it only extends to 3 countries today, the law as passed allows the minister tomorrow, without consultation with anyone, people, I guess with cabinet they would do it, to extend it to every CARICOM nation. that they wish to extend it to. So I assume that that is Jamaica out in the northeast, and Haiti and Guyana down in the south. Every single one at this. They can just simply say we add that one to it, because that's what the bill says. It doesn't have to come back to Parliament. Thank you.
Sorry, just a thing. The Skilled Nationals program is open right now to all CARICOM countries.
I'm referring to the free movement. The 3 countries that we have that you could come and live here. So that can be extended to anyone, to any country.
But the caveat to that is that that country that they're coming from has to offer that to Barbadians. And that's the reluctance right now. That's one of the reasons why all of them have not jumped on it, because they have their concerns too. So you're not going to see a rapid influx of people in the way that you think. And as far as I know, but I don't know if the immigration people can speak to this, as far as I know, if you are a criminal or you are a person that will be a threat to national security, CARICOM resident or visa or passport, whatever, once you're scrutinized, I would believe that you would be flagged as somebody not to be allowed to come to the country. But immigration can confirm whether this is the case or not.
Okay.
Thanks. We have the advanced passenger information. That's the system we have. So, yes, we work along with our security agencies and we can tell whether or not you are a person of interest once that information is provided to us. So.
They can't come without a passport.
Even though you have a passport, we reserve the right to question. And as I said, once that information becomes available to us, we will make the necessary queries and investigation. So.
Okay.
And
Before you come in, Minister Ware, Senior Minister Sinclair wanted to come in, but
Yeah, I mean, Minister Ware can go, but I find I want Senator Molyneux to understand this is not a back and forth with you and I, because I fully appreciate what you are saying. Okay, I honestly, I really do appreciate it, and I think it's a good intervention. Then let me make that very clear. But I think we have to be very transparent and fair across the board of how we deal with these things, because that's why we run ourselves sometimes perhaps into problems. There are many people who step off airplanes in this country with fat wallets and deep pockets and go on the West Coast and elsewhere and buy property. They use some very well-known real estate agents too. I am sure due diligence is done on those persons. They're not citizens, they don't ask for citizenship, but they buy property and they have a stake in Barbados. And we welcome them pretty much, as well we ought to, because that is what our investment model portends. And if we are going to be saying that that is okay, and we know how to manage that process, we equally have to say that this other part is something that we can manage too. We must not divorce ourselves from the capacity to know and understand with modern technology and information and with modern security protocols that we can manage a process similar to the one that you have described. I fail to believe that we cannot do so. Now, there's no perfect system, sure. And some people may slip through the cracks. That happens from time to time, but that is why we have corrective corollary and corroborating measures to ensure, from a national security perspective and otherwise, that we can quickly pivot and correct any errors that may occur. But I think that we have to be very, very clear in what, and that's where you go back to the policy. And the government's policy is very clear on this. The system is challenged And I'm leaving out all the other things that may have been mentioned even by myself, issues pertaining to the skills level and depopulation and all that. We know all of that. Dealing with the grand issue here, which is that we have a system that for years we know, an immigration system, those of us who are in the system and those of us who have observed, we know the system is broken. We pretended that we could manage it down in its brokenness and produce a certain outcome. We have now collided with the reality. The issue is, how do we frame in this particular type of legislation these things that we're trying to change? How do we not program necessarily for what is going to happen today or tomorrow, but what's going to happen 50 years down the road? This is why this bill is important. I don't imagine that the government or the citizenry would like to delude ourselves into believing that we are addressing only issues that pertain to now. The thing is, what is going to happen 25 years from now? Because we may not come back to this again. And that is why this legislation, these two pieces of legislation are so important. And my thing is, again, the issue of, this now becomes down to an issue of for some people, of timing. And the simple question I ask, what's the difference between 3 years, 2 years, 10 years, 5 years, or even 1 day? So we have to find that medium, and I think the chairman, has hit on it. We have to find that happy medium that says to us, yes, we can address this issue while it's not offending the sensibilities of people or the sensitivities of people for what they believe is a national vestige of pride. That is your citizenship and your passport, because everybody's talking about the passport, but the issue really here is the citizenship. that is what is the thing. The passport you get because you become a citizen. So the issue here for us is, how do we manage that? And that is really why governance is such a difficult thing, because it's about making those choices. And my thing is, first, we do not sacrifice national security. We ensure that we protect the national security of the country. Two, we look at what are the systemic challenges, or should I say, two, what is the economic, social, cultural policy that we want to undergird, and I think that has been properly explained here. And then I think, what are the administrative tools and interventions that allow us, from the legislation to the actual administration by immigration and others, to execute that policy? And my own sense is that this bill, in its current form, bar for some things that need to be adjusted, basically meets the standard of what is required for modern legislative and policy programming, followed by the administrative tools to get us where we need to go. That is what I think is here in terms of what the government is trying to do, Chairman.
Thank you, Senior Minister. One of the things I recognize with the submissions, they all speak to the length of time being too short. Some mention due diligence. 2 years is too long, too short for due diligence. And I agree with you, Senior Minister, with the security protocols in place, and with technology especially, I see no reason why we cannot do due diligence in less than a year. The precedent has been set in Argentina, for example. They have a 2-year policy. We know the gold standard, as articulated by some, 5 years, 7 years, as long as 10 years. The decision to have 2 years is a value decision, not only based on population mobility, but it speaks to economic development also, and they both go hand in hand. So my submission basically is to say, if I can weigh in, and I think I have the opportunity as chairman to weigh in as well, that 2 years is not too short a time. We've seen 2 years in countries, international countries, for citizenship. So the precedents have been set. And for us, we have a problem. We have a population problem, a skilled population problem. And for us to continue to reference what is the norm in the world, we have to push new frontiers and we have to be innovative and creative, and that is what this government is about. So I don't see 2 years being too long to do due diligence with technology and the necessary security protocols in place. That's my submission here as chairman, and I think I'm within my right, Mr. Samlin, to give my 2 cents on this. Minister Weir, I think you had a comment, so over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I thought that Senior Minister Sinclair was residing in my head when he spoke to the issues of investment and how they are treated to, and perhaps I would start against that premise that we as a government, and not only this government that's currently in power, successive governments of Barbados have been severely criticized if we don't facilitate investment. And no matter how you look at it, the players and actors involved are the ones who will call out government for delays in making sure that commerce is facilitated, that investment can take place. So let us, first of all, disabuse our minds from the notion that we can delay people who we seek to give citizenship to, but we can't delay investment. It is, to my mind, hypocrisy of the highest order, because we need investment. All of us know that we need it, and we do everything to facilitate it. Any government will do anything to facilitate it once it is legitimate. Therefore, I sat this morning and I heard the first presentation, which suggested that people waited as long as 16 years to have applications for citizenship by birth considered. And it's against also that backdrop that we need to step back and recognize what can happen in a system that is under pressure and does not deliver as it really ought to. Therefore, the question before us is it 2 years? Or should it be more than 2 years? My view, as well articulated by everyone else, is that with the 21st century, we are able to get information on anyone that applies for citizenship. That with the use of technology today, we are able to do things that we weren't able to do in the past in a more nimble fashion. And I recognize the question that Senator Walters placed, which was, are we going to be any worse off? What he does not recognize is that we are already worse off, because we have an aging population. Average age 60 tells you that you're already worse off. Equally, if you have a school that can carry up to 200 students that only have a roll of around 84, what is that telling you? So therefore, however you look at it, we're under pressure. Now, if I am to read from the document submitted by the Democratic Labour Party, it says Barbados faces legitimate demographic and economic pressures, including an aging population, slower labour force growth, skills mismatches, and the need to maintain competitiveness in an increasingly mobile global economy. I don't think that we need to have it more explicit than that. And therefore, the question of 2 years, we can continue to debate. As far as I am concerned, technology allows for us to be able to do it. But the general tone of the conversation is that everyone agrees. That's what I'm hearing. And it only comes down to the 2 years period. So let us just decide what it is that we really want to put on the table. Because if we don't do so, we run the risk of telling the country, who may not otherwise understand what we are seeking to achieve here, that there's something arcane about this, and it simply isn't. So what? Do we disagree that we in a 21st century existence cannot be responsible enough to be able to examine, do due diligence, and come up with answers in 2 years? And that we, for all the years that we have facilitated people, without the rigors of the technology we have, but in the name of investment, we have been taking it and allowing for it to be done in this country? I beg to differ. And my suggestion is that if we are going to fool ourselves and bury our heads in the sand, we can do so and become emotional about a passport, and become emotional about what a person will do with a passport, and not become emotional that you take investment from people and you respect the fact that they are responsible people and that they're not the same person that's going to come to Barbados with some motive or be some criminal somewhere else in the world, but that is a legitimate person who seeks to take advantage of a return on his or her investment. And for me, we have to be consistent in this country and be careful with the narrative that we put in the public. For me, this is a very structured piece of legislation, and all it seeks to do here is to determine how nimble we can be in achieving the objective. And that is what is on the table. It's either 2 years or come up with your suggestion with what it should be. For me, you can't look technology in the face. For me, you can't look at how we can deliver in this day and age and tell me we should go back to an old system and an arrangement as if you have to sit down and manually do everything.
Well articulated, Minister, and you know the gold standard and all these standards that we are citing, these were standards that were set eons ago, and we have to recognize that we're in a different time where technology, different type of security protocols have indeed brought us to where we are. The war that is going on in Iran, you can see as well the use of technology. I don't even want to go there because we don't like war. So what ensued back then, 50 years ago, is totally different to what is happening now in the world. People are moving. You are in Barbados and you are working in Dubai as a result of technology. You're in Dubai and you're working in China as a result of technology. So we can sit here and speak of gold standards, and what was then 10 years cannot facilitate what we have before us and where we need to get at this stage as a country. Skills are indeed necessary for us to develop economically, socially, environmentally, and we don't have these skills. We heard it from the minister who has responsibility for tertiary education. We don't have the skill set in here, in this country. Even in the construction sector, we have to import labor. Let's get with it. 2 years, minister, senior minister, ministers, senators, is not a short time. In my view, I think it's a long time. Argentina has been doing this in 2 years, and they are not now doing it. Argentina may say to themselves, 2 years is too long. While we are pushing to get to 2 years, they may be pushing to get, I don't know where, I don't want to say 1 year, I don't want to say 6 months. But at the end of the day, I agree with Minister Weir, this is a very good piece of legislation, this initiative here, and I support it. Over to you, Senior Minister.
I also want to think so that the public doesn't, because I know this is being streamed, so that we don't give the impression that they're not guardrails here. Because I heard some saying that, you know, the minister can come back from the previous clause which we dealt with, that we just give the the minister the authority to make decisions in finality. Under the section, and I think it bears ready reading, that the person can access this status if they satisfy the minister that they have lawfully resided in Barbados, a permanent resident. I think most people have seen this, for the aggregate period, an aggregate period of 180 days during the period of at least 730 days, that's where you get your 2 years, immediately preceding the date of the application. But it also says in 6, subject to subsection 4. If you go to subsection 4, you will see exactly the points that we were making earlier. The right of refusal. And the right of refusal under 4, the minister may, in the interest of national security, public policy, refuse to register a person as a citizen of Barbados who, and it goes down there to list fairly copious and iterated items there where the minister may refuse. So there are guardrails in place for the minister to be able to be advised by his officials, because I don't want the impression to be given that a minister of immigration, or that any minister, I hope, wakes up one morning and decides that they're going to execute such important responsibilities without being advised by the appropriate people, including the chief immigration officer, the commissioner of police, and all the other people who appertain to ensuring that the interest of the country is protected. So I think this gives the, I think it really gives us an opportunity to properly converge rather than collide the policy objective with the need to ensure that we protect country and citizens. And those persons who live in Barbados already and claim citizenship by the means that they do. So I would, absent, I've seen the submissions and I've seen the various numbers being given, but as I said, it is a matter for us to decide and to advise, I should say, because this committee is to advise, having taken hearing and submissions, to advise on what would be an appropriate thing. But I, in my submission, would say that I see no particular reason to stop us from advising that the 270 days be a standard for this piece of legislation.
Thank you, sir. Senator Mello.
Thank you. I'll just give a summary of what I thought I said, which may be different to what may have been heard. First of all, Senior Minister, I was referring to the Caribbean Community Free Movement legislation when I referred to the fact that the Minister has the power. Under item 7 of that legislation, the Minister may by order amend the schedule. Currently, the schedule to that bill has only 3 countries in it: Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent. That was what I was referring to. I was not referring to the current bill. So that power is completely within the Minister to do that schedule. Secondly, with regards to the length of time, I agree completely. It's not my point. I was referring to the submissions that were made. I have no problem with the time period. My challenge is that what's not been addressed, and that's fine, it may just be a minority opinion, is that the persons who have attained citizenship in our CARICOM, brothers and sisters, through CBI, should not be afforded that same pathway. I think that is the weakness in the system. I don't have a problem with the 180 days in the 730. I don't have a problem with the 270 and the 1095. And I want to disassociate myself with any comments with regards to being made with regards to those people who have chosen to invest in Barbados and never asked for citizenship, residency, or otherwise, but simply we're making investments here. I made no comments along those, so I think those remarks shouldn't be directed at me. But those are my points, Mr. Chairman. So the time period, no problem. CBI, I have a big problem.
All right, thank you, Senator. Any further comments? Senator Walters.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we should forget the reason why we're in committee with these bills. It was really to get feedback from the public and to understand their concerns. And I think I appreciate that the government will defend the bill, but I think there should be some level of flexibility in terms of how they address the concerns of the citizens. And it should not be taken in the position of a BLP versus DLP situation. We're not here for that, right? And I wouldn't want the committee to degrade itself into that sort of conversation, right? But I said that to say I was going to just echo the sentiments of Senator Mallalieu, because I think that a pertinent question about the citizenship by investment and the fact that those countries that participate in that program or similar programs have had some pressures from the bigger countries. How do we safeguard ourselves from being included in some of those, in that dilemma? And has that been thought through as well, right? And what safeguards then can the government assure us of that our citizens will be protected when we want to travel, etc. So I think there are valid points that come up, and I think that we need to consider those points as we go on. As relates to the days of stay, length of time, 180 days, 2 years, this sentimentality around it. Again, I asked the question, what are the disadvantages or the advantages of going 2 years versus 5 years, for example? You're making the point, Chair, that 2 years we'll be more competitive when compared to other countries in terms of attracting persons, because we have the deficit and we want to address it as fast as possible.
If I may interject, the point was made, I think, by a number of persons, and I think someone quoted the Democratic Labour Party document as saying that we have a problem. And the point was made, the reason why 2 years, because we need to solve the problem now. And I think that point was made more so than, you know, the type of skills that you can get within 2 years versus 5 years. But it is solving the problem. So don't misinterpret what was said. It is the issue. What's the mischief we are trying to correct? What's the problem we are faced with right now? And that's why. And let me just add, while sitting in this chair, we don't see DLP or BLP. And we cannot, we cannot bring those terminologies into this forum, because it is not about DLP or BLP. We are dealing with submissions, and we are referencing documents that are before the committee. So I want that to be struck from the record, because I don't want it to go into the record at all that we're here deliberating BLP, DLP. Right? So that's not what we're here for. Because the public, we receive submissions from the public. We don't know who's BLP or who DLP, but we look at the substance of the submissions and we give our comments. That's the whole purpose of this committee.
And also, Mr. Chairman, if I may add, I think our colleague is being a little mischievous, but even so, the truth is that is that, I mean, we who are members of the government side also have a responsibility to explain, because it is our legislation. So we can't just receive comments from the public, as well we ought to, and fairly consider them, because some of them are actually very good submissions, and not try to explain the reason why we did what we did in the first place, and how we composed this legislation. So I don't want Senator Walters to get the impression that we are not accepting that advice or that we're rejecting it out of hand. We're just trying to explain so that everybody understands what the thinking is. Now, it may be, as per section, particular section, there may be a disagreement with our own policy prescription, And that is why you have the committee, so that in teasing out those particular things, our viewpoint may very well be changed. But it has to be changed for a very well explained reason. And we take that under consideration because this committee is not the final say on this. This committee is to review, set the points to discuss, cogitate, and then make the recommendations based on what we have seen and heard and been able to discuss. So, as you say, this is not a partisan exercise or a personal exercise, even though I wouldn't have anything personal against anybody on the committee for that, for any reason whatsoever. But just for the record, so that is known. And I agree with you, Chairman, supporting you in that particular regard.
Thank you. Thank you, Senior. So back over to you, Senator Walters, to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so, I was just summing up. We're talking 2 years, gold standard. You're saying it's 5 years. Some people say 7 years. I think if we could have some data, some real data from immigration, probably across some countries, to really look at it to see how we can get to a number, I think that would at least help me to understand and give some clarity on what really is the gold standard and what other countries or territories are doing in their legislation as well. I think that would help the committee to make an informed decision and not just a decision based on what one person is saying or the other. But I would really like to see if we can get that question addressed as it relates to the effect that the Citizenship by Investment program might have on our relationship with those countries if we pursue this.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one comment. First of all, please permit me to state that my reference to this document, which was part of the submissions by the public and includes submissions from the Democratic Labour Party, was my only source of quoting, and not to derail this conversation into BLP and DLP. So for the records, I want to make that very clear. Equally, I believe that Barbados must set its own standards. And whilst I acknowledge that we look at benchmarks and those other kinds of things, you're elected to govern. And if you look at the situation and you see the urgency of it and have to move to a legislative framework in order to address it, then you must demonstrate to the public in very large and meaningful manner that you're committed to doing what is right by the country. And therefore, setting your own standards may be required at times, even though you understand what benchmarks are there for, and you still need to govern. So, set in 2 years, as far as I am concerned. This is a determination based on the level of technology, as I've said before, that is available. Given the confidence that we have a Security Council, given the confidence that immigration can get advanced passenger information before people come to Barbados, and I will say that much because I know a fair amount about the travel trade and how it works. And I am confident indeed that we sometimes have to trust ourselves. And that is where I have the greatest fear, that many of us who are dealing with these matters really need to be mindful of the public that we are bringing along. And I strongly believe so, because your narrative sometimes can take a very comfortable public and make them uncomfortable. And we really have a national responsibility to determine what narrative we're going to use. I have absolutely no problems with people presenting their opinion on what can be and what may not be. But at the end of the day, you got to respect a government to govern. And I strongly support the fact that if we are to treat this based on what I'm reading from these submissions, not just one, from many, then it is suggesting to me that everybody agrees that we have skills deficits and that we have an issue with population and that we need to address it, and how do we address it? And that is the reason why I feel fairly passionate about the structure that this legislation has taken and the fact that it has come here to Joint Select Committee for us to hear from the public and for us to discuss the submissions and also give our opinion. But we should not leave believing that we cannot determine for ourselves what timelines we need.
Point well made, Minister. We've exhausted, we've heard from every single member of the committee on this very important matter of compressed citizenship timelines and citizenship integrity. I'm happy that we were able to agree with some very salient points and disagree with some as well. And that's the nature of why we are here as a committee. So can we now move on to the next submission of labor market, wages, housing, infrastructure, and national development? Submissions made by Jefferson Trotman and the Democratic Labour Party, Barbados Employees Confederation, Carola Nichols, Gilden Bourne and Dujon, and Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The individual submitters expressed concern about wage disparity favoring foreign workers, the topic of housing affordability, strain on health care, water, transport, crime, and a call for evidence base for labor needs to be published. The employer and business bodies were supportive of the managed migration, urged alignment with the Barbados population policy that was submitted, the clear work permit service standards, and define investor, entrepreneur, and remote worker pathways, some of which we discussed before. So over to the committee. Or we want to allow persons to do the individual submissions on this one?
Sure.
Sure. Senator Walters.
The summary individual submitters expressed concerns about wage disparity, favoring foreign workers, etc. And then the call for the evidence base for the labor needs to be published. Again, I think this is a very pertinent and important call because the government over the years has been saying that we have shortages and we have skills deficits, but we have not been told specifically where those deficits are and or shortages. We know for sure, well, we know there has been labor imported for construction, but what we don't know if there's really a labor shortage on construction workers or if those workers just came in because they were more affordable than local employees or employment in that field of construction. But I think that something needs to be published to really say to Barbadians, these are the areas where we have deficits and shortages in, and these are where this is where we are doing well, and so that this information can be consumed to make better decisions. Because all we're hearing right now is there's shortages, we have older people, we need more working people, and there's no real clear direction on where this will go. It also brings me to the point where another committee member made the point that we need the right people. So that means if we need the right people, we need to know where we need those people and how transparent is that process then, that we can see who we are really going after as those right people as well. So I think that I support this call to have more information, more data available to the public and to this committee. It would be useful.
Minister Husbands.
Yes, I'm acting for the Minister of Labour this week. also a minister for technological and vocational training, and therefore shortages in skills will come to my desk. The issue of wanting more data, there is some data available, but what we might need to do is to just make sure it's published that people will know. But just to give you an idea, and you would have heard some of this anecdotally already, yes, in construction there is a definite shortage, and I'll explain how we arrived at that problem as a country. We also have shortages with the police, with nurses, with teachers. You're getting the constant poaching of some of those skills going overseas because they're looking for more pay and things like that. We have problems with legal drafters. We don't have enough of those. In the medical area, there are a number of specialized skills that we do not have. And the hoteliers have also been reporting severe shortages with hotel workers. So I'll deal with the construction of the hotel workers so you begin to understand why this would have occurred. When we went through the severe economic downturn that we had between 2008 and to about 2016 or so, what would have happened, a lot of young people, knowing that there were a lot of construction companies closed, so it meant that a lot of people who had construction skills had gone out of the market. And therefore young people coming up did not get the sense that they should go and study in those areas because they felt it was a waste of time because there were no jobs. COVID now created a severe halt on further construction. Everybody who was coming to build a hotel pulled back. So when COVID opened back again, what you had was this rush of demand. So that Barbados, for example, found itself with 9 hotel properties that wanted to be built when we moved out of COVID. Normally you would not get that large a number coming in at any one time within your economy. So the challenge you had then was that the demand for labor was much higher, but the skills were not there. Not that you didn't have unemployed people, but they were willing to do day labor work, but they did not come with the essential construction skills. What we've been doing in the ministry is to begin to fast track, and that is where the construction gateway, etc., that we started to help us rebuild the skills in that area. Similarly, we started hospitality because we now need something like 4,000 hospitality workers that we don't have. The issue here raised by the persons about the concern about wages is a genuine one, because across the world there are people who are willing to come and work for less than a Barbadian. And that's the honest truth. But what we want to be able to achieve in Barbados, Barbadians will not want to work for low wages. So what is it we have to do? We have to ensure that not only do they have the skills, but they also have the productivity and output to be competitive in their own market. And that is what we are assiduously working on as a government, so that the Barbadian worker remains attractive as a person that you would want to employ, because they will produce and they're able to present you with the skills. So when you are going through this kind of change, change is always painful and it can be disruptive. It's just like when you're losing your milk teeth, it is painful. When your new teeth come, it hurts. When you're having a baby, it hurts. Whenever you have a major adjustment, there is going to be some dislocation. What a responsible government does, you cannot go back to the past and hold the past so that people avoid the pain. What you do is you try to create the conditions, provide the supports, decide what you need to do to ease the transition, but encourage your population to make the transition and come forward. So what we have been seeking to do now, this was the challenge that Barbados would have had. People who are coming to build hotels do not want to wait 3 years while you train workers. So you had a decision to make. Do you want to keep the investment so that you could at least get the hotel workers opportunities and the tourism growth? Or do you say, no, you don't allow labor to come in because there's a shortage, because you want to keep it for Barbadians, but Barbadians can't fill it for 2 years or so? So that was the challenge that we had. But the commitment of the government is train up the Barbadian workforce with the essential skills and the essential output so that we can keep as many jobs for Barbadians as we can. Now, one of the problems that you have in a society, like for example, Barbadians stayed away from agriculture. And the minister here can tell you that we would have gone through a period as a country where you could not find enough agricultural workers to work in our industry. And that's how you got so many people coming up from Guyana to be able to fill that gap. That will happen in a country that is growing, and if it is a high income country, there are things that your citizens will no longer wish to do or wish to perform. And therefore you have to keep adjusting your policy, and you have to keep adjusting your program to be able to accommodate where they're at, what their needs are, and what at the end of the day you need for the overall well-being of the economy. It's not an easy thing, but it has to be managed, and you have to do it as well as you can so that you minimize that disruption as much as you can.
Thank you, Minister Husbands. Any further comments on this? But we've taken what you said into consideration, Senator Walters. And as Minister Husbands said, there's some data, and I can say, and I know for sure, the evidence was there in the construction sector. Even while doing at least 4 housing units, 4 housing developments, the juggle between private and public was indeed a major challenge to find skilled workers and even laborers. So it is real, and I guess you've asked for evidence, and I know within those ministries there is enough evidence to show that we have had a skill shortage in some sectors in this country.
Just to add, Chair, I noticed the conversation centered around skills and wages, but there were other things that were mentioned in terms of infrastructure, water, transport, crime, things that are tossed out, and things that are genuine concerns for Barbadians. Of course, with the more persons coming into the country, the possibility of crime will increase, and more sophisticated forms of crime. But I'm sure that such things are dealt with during the due diligence process. We're not going to be opening our arms to the criminal element. And these are things that persons must be concerned. As Senior Minister said, of course, no system is perfect, and things will happen. People will try things and risk things. But I'm sure that these are matters that will be addressed. Transport, I don't see a major issue as it relates to transport. Certainly, government has done a lot to improve the public transport system. And if you're going to speak of transport and infrastructure, in the same breath, also a lot has been done to improve the road infrastructure. So the means by which persons get to the points of production are pretty much improved. Resilience is built into them. So that would not necessarily be an issue that would be of major concern if we were to see an influx of numbers coming in. And in fact, that is here, I'm addressing it because I don't even think that we've seen any impact on our transportation system because of any persons moving to this country. In terms of water, government has also been improving and modernizing the ways of distributing water to the residents. I know we have had some challenges in certain parts of the country, and as you see, the expansion of housing developments, you will see a greater strain on water supply. But of course, I think that measures are being put in place, certainly by the BWA, to ensure that we have other means other than that underground aquifers to supply water. We already have the desalination plant on the Spring Garden, and there's some more planned for the north, which will also augment the water system down there. And we would have had partnerships with other entities over the years to augment water systems here in this country. So these are things that, yes, on the surface they present as concerns, but I think that government is well on its way to addressing these issues even before they become real issues.
Senator Waters, you're coming back and come. Okay. Yeah. Any further comments on this? And I take your comments, Minister Springer. There were other areas, and I understand the issue of water is topical in the country, and these are some of the areas that were mentioned. And by no means we will skirt over these issues. There will be oral presentations by parties who have expressed an interest in presenting their oral presentations before the committee, and at the end, on the other business, we will discuss the timing for that, where some of these other matters will be expressed, verbally by submitters, in addition to what we are doing here today, going through our summary, grouping them and going through the summary. So we have time for more expansive presentations and discussion. So thank you, Minister, for the clarity brought to the other matters. And indeed, we are not treating them as just any other matter, because they are very critical. Once there are no further comments on number 6, the labor market, wages, housing, infrastructure, national development, we move on to 7, CARICOM, constitutional and treaty consistency, submissions by the Barbados Employees Confederation and the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Both confederations identify tensions between the immigration bill browse entry prohibition power, and CARICOM free movement under Articles 32-38 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. And we heard some of that discussion earlier. And between the Advanced Passenger and Biometric Data Provisions and the Data Protection Act 2019, recommending the framework to be harmonized with regional and international obligations. Senior Minister, clear to weigh in on this one? Number 7.
I think the provision is pretty clear. Obviously under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and treaty law, which we have reduced to domestic legislation, as well we ought to, because we are members of CARICOM. These provisions, I think, are consistent with what is required for us to be consistent with those provisions. Of course, we have review of them by the CCJ in its original jurisdiction. And so I think that based on what I'm seeing here, I think that is consistent with what currently exists, and therefore, even notwithstanding the submissions that have been made, I think the law captures pretty succinctly what is required. So this is a relatively easy section to deal with.
That's why we sought your intervention here, based on your skill set and your portfolio as senior minister as well. And I agree with you 100%. But we still need to hear from the members if they have any other queries as it relates to what is before you in the bills, as it relates to what was being proposed here for the harmonization with the regional and international obligations. It is clear within the Treaty of Chaguaramas and of course within the bills, the immigration bills, the entry prohibition power is clear. Any other comments? Okay, thanks. We move on to 8. Safeguards for vulnerable persons, children, and anti-trafficking. These, we received 2 submissions. The name is Coretta, I don't like to pronounce Coretta, Joe, and Gildenborn and Dujon. Joe proposes a guardian amendment to protect minors during the execution of search warrants, appropriate adult presence, notification of child protection services, age verification. Gildenborn and Dujon urge gender responsive and anti-trafficking protections across work permits, sponsorship, screening and enforcement aligned with Barbados' trafficking in persons legislation. The BEC separately raises the best interests of the child standard for the registration of minors. Comments? This is captured in the Citizens Act, the Anti-Trafficking and Gender Safeguards in the Citizens Bill. The issues raised basically is to add protection for vulnerable migrants. That's basically what has been raised here. Any comments on this? Justice, thank you.
Yes.
Legislation caters to this already. And some
Mr. Chairman, I think all of these things are taken care of elsewhere in other legislation, and we can't encumber an immigration statute with matters that have nothing to do with it. That's my comment and advice.
Justice, we have heard you.
Thank you.
We have heard you. Good advice as well. Any further comments on it? Okay, we're now down to the schedule of oral presentations. There are some submitters seeking to appear before the committee, and Mr. Peter Thompson, Mr. Corey Greenidge for the Democratic Labour Party, Mr. Stephen Bricknell, Mr. Desmond Eales, Ms. Emery Gildenborn, and Ms. Felicia Dujon, together with the Barbados Bar Association. They expressly requested to make oral presentations. Ms. Michaela Blackman and Ms. Faith Seeley, the BEC, and Dr. Carlita Bab-Sherfer indicated their willingness to appear to further engage the committee. On the point of Dr. Bab-Sherfer, we agreed at point 1, the citizens by birth for children of Barbadian diplomats should be addressed as per the request by all the parties. So I'm not sure, having agreed to that, whether we would still need to hear a submission, an oral submission from those parties. Clerk of Parliament, it is within our purview to instruct those parties that we so agree today and to seek confirmation from them whether they're still willing to appear before something, to present something that has already been agreed by the committee. Right? That's correct? Okay, thank you. And we still give them the opportunity, but in the words of some people, we don't want to waste your time, nor the minister's time, nor the senator's time, because we know you all are busy. Right?
If I may, Chair, it won't be wasting our time. The truth is that this is extremely. I wasn't here at the beginning, so I'm not sure what my colleagues would.
Wasting their time as well.
Yeah,
that's
what colleagues would have said at that time. But I want to put on record that we receive the submissions of our colleagues in relation to this matter with all degree of seriousness, yes? Because this has been a lacuna in the application of the law as per Section 4 of the Constitution of Barbados, which guarantees the right of persons who are born to diplomats serving serving the country outside of the country to be afforded citizenship by right. And there was some confusion, if not conundrum, between the Citizenship Registration Act, relative to what happens at registration at birth, and the Immigration Act, the old one, that is. And because of that, for many decades, persons who have been serving the country as diplomat or consular officers overseas have had offspring that have not been accorded the appropriate treatment as citizens of Barbados. And believe it or not, this has been going on for a few decades. The Henry Ford Commission on the Constitutional Commission spoke to it, but suffice to say that only this week gone, we took a paper to Cabinet to have this matter addressed, and the appropriate action is being taken to rectify this and have this settled in the favor, and I quite say justifiably so, of those persons who would have written these submissions. So as it is now, it makes then a redundancy for them to appear, because the matter has, even before this, received our attention, and we're acting with some level of expedition to get it resolved. And so I'll be expecting a few weeks' time this matter will be safely put behind us, and thankfully so as well. So, but for the fact that they did indeed write and felt the need, and justifiably so, to write this committee, I think this committee needs to record that their submissions are in fact correct and appropriate, and note in our advice that the appropriate treatment is being given even outside of the deliberations of this committee.
Thank you, Senior Minister. And what I can say on this point, that we agreed, the community unanimously agreed to the amendment to the Citizens by Birth for Children of Barbadian Diplomats. But I thank you as a minister responsible, Senior Minister responsible, for your explanation and your endorsement as well on this critical matter of citizens of birth for children of Barbadian diplomats living abroad. So, Clark, it is our duty as instructed as well by Senior Minister, who has responsibility for the diplomatic corps, to write these persons, letting them know that we have agreed and support their submissions, and they're being acted upon not only by the Cabinet of Barbados, but by this committee. And it is well done that they will be recognized as citizens of Barbados and correct what we call a wrong for over 20 years. Because I see here, longer than that, because I see...
It's almost 4 decades.
Yeah, I see here in the submission, noting these children have waited 16 years for a Section 4A certificate.
So much longer than that, trust me.
Yeah.
It's not been a good, well, let's say we are on the happy side of it, but the history must reflect that and that's why this exercise is so important, yes, because it helps to clarify the difference between policy, the legislation, and the administration. That's why this exercise is so important, because in what has happened, everybody know what the intent was, everybody know what the legislation is, but yet in the administration of it, there was a lacuna that allowed for plurilateral interpretations, and the final place to rest on and to issue those certificates was not there, and the ground was shifty for some people, and it was not done. And then, so we have a whole set of people, and we did provide a list, and that list is quite extensive, of persons who were born overseas, but had a birth certificate that didn't quite look like the ones that you and I have. And there are really citizens of Barbados. So it really has not been a good thing. But, you know, these things happen, and it's not any particular government or administration. This has been happening across all of them. So it means that we have now come to a happy place where this administration has been able to correct that, and hopefully for those persons give them some comfort. Much delayed, but certainly much earned.
Thank you again, Senior Minister. We want to give this session the level of seriousness that it so deserves. The public will have given several submissions, 21, and while that is our mandate, and I don't see anything different happening here, we want to carry it on in that vein. And having said that, we now have to find the appropriate time within the next couple of weeks or less to have the presentation, the oral presentations done. And we want that all members, if possible, be present to give it the seriousness of purpose, because persons give up their time to prepare, and I must admit there were some very, very detailed submissions, and it shows that persons are indeed, they're caring citizens of this country, and they're indeed interested in what the government has in store to take us down the road 50 years to continue to punch above our weight and to create Barbados as the best place to live, work, do business, and raise our children. And we want the appropriate time where all of us are present. And I now open the floor through the Clerk of Parliament for a time, especially we know, Senior Minister, you're on the road a lot, and that's your job. On behalf of the people of this country, we wish for you to be here, because most of the matters fall under the purview of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, especially some of these serious matters. So I'm not sure if this... Excuse me a minute, please. So the floor is open for a date next week for us to meet. Not next week. Okay, the following... Yes, the week after. Not next week, yes, thanks. The week after. Miss Hambling, the dates available. You can use the mic, please. You can use it.
We have Monday the 15th. Yeah, Monday the 15th, or, well, we have a number of ministers here, so Thursday, or Friday the 19th.
The dates available of Monday the 15th or Friday the 19th of June. Comments? 1 15th, 2 15th, 3 15th, 4 15th. Chief Immigration Officer, Monday 15th. Thank you. CPC, Monday 15th. Thank you very much. Minister Ware, Monday 15th. Thank you. Yes. Minister Senior Minister said the 15th, yes. And Minister Husbands, Monday 15th. Okay. So Monday 15th is it? Where we'll hear the oral submissions, 10 a.m. here at the Senate. And
question to you, Chair. There was a discussion last time, if I remember correct, as to where you were going to do that. So you're definitely doing it
here.
Fine, that's good with me.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The persons agreed to come here, and there's no issue with coming to Parliament at all. We're recognizing the appropriateness of a tariff for Parliament. They were indeed in favor of it, so we're fine with that. So Monday the 15th, 10 a.m., where we would hear the oral presentations from the submitters. We're down to any other business.
Chair, the intention is to hear all submissions on that.
Those persons who have the 9 persons who have expressed an interest.
All 9, you did?
Yes, yes. I
One
don't
day,
think it-
okay.
Down to any other business. Clerk of Parliament, we can take it off the stream now because we've concluded the discussion on